So, hi Zach, can you tell me who you are and what you do?
Hello. Yeah, glad to be here. My name's Creighton. I am the founder of Hemans Talent, which I founded coming up to a year ago.
What motivated you to transition from being a biller in a bigger business to starting your own recruitment company?
So I was in a leadership role and effectively stopped hands-on billing around 2021. So it had been about 3 to 4 years, off the tools, spearheading the growth of the business and brand that I was responsible for. I'd spent over 10 years building and growing teams, moving to the US in 2018 to start an office from scratch, and then moving to a larger business and scaling their financial services brand to at peak about 35 plus recruiters. And so over time, the thought starts to creep in of, well, I've got the perfect resume to go and do my own thing. In effect, I'm just replicating what I've done for the last decade, just without the same financial backing that I otherwise would have if I was with an established firm. And really, if I could see past that, which I did, then it made perfect sense. In addition to that, I will say that I do love recruitment, which might possibly be seen as a weird thing to say nowadays, as I think perhaps most tolerate it versus thrive in it, and for many it's maybe a means to an end. But I am so passionate about what I do, and I don't want to come across as being self-righteous, but we are changing people's lives, and because of this, I also believe that we have to take a meaningful responsibility and that candidates aren't just a number on a spreadsheet, and making the wrong move can be disastrous, not just for the person moving, but their families, right? And the residual effect that it ultimately has. And so recruitment needs to be done well, ethically, and with the client and candidate taking precedence over our own financial gain. So in starting my own firm, it's really allowed me to reset and dictate the way that I believe recruitment should be done. And then obviously the standard things that come along with founding a firm is you keep 100% of the fees you make. And quite frankly, although plenty of shops out there claim to have, market leading commission schemes, they simply just don't. And so I wanted a bigger slice of the pie to justify my ROE, return on effort, and maximize my financial position.
So, people usually say that there's never the right time. What was your trigger moment that pushed you to start up on your own?
There were probably a few. And what recruiters will find is that often the trigger moments they come from frustrations and apprehensions, ironically, right? Not necessarily, huge moments of success. What I've witnessed, albeit anecdotally, is that the billers out there doing, 1.5, $3 million plus, nearly all of them work for an agency. They're often not founders. Seldomly will you see one of those big billers go and start on their own. Why? Because they have access to an established, often diversified book of business. And if they were to go out on their own, I'd hazard a guess and say that most of them wouldn't get close to replicating their billings. And if they did, it would probably take a few years. Perhaps they're more of a 180 recruiter just delivering into big accounts. And often they are, not all the time, but often. So there's no value in taking any risk. If it ain't broke, why fix it? For me, there were more questions and answers in terms of the work I was doing versus the financial payoff and the opportunities that I had in front of me. And as they say, you will age regardless. Might as well try. It's a whole other discussion how you remunerate your leaders, because often they're the ones that are at most risk of going off to start their own gig.
So, when you were thinking about setting up your own business, what options did you explore to do so, and what were the key reasons you decided to launch with Recruit Hub?
Yeah, being honest, I didn't explore many options. I was initially just setting up myself. I had several demos for CRMs, VoIP systems, website builders. I was aware of some of the back office companies that take the strain off of founders on the operational side of things. But being honest, when I did the math, it wasn't a particularly significant investment to set all of this up myself. The biggest headache was just establishing what's the best option for me. And when you're presented with two options over 10, you can make a decision much faster. So it was actually taking me a while, ironically, to make some decisions. And that's one of the reasons why Recruit Hub is so helpful, because they have partnerships and systems that have been tried and tested by founders before me. And when you're considering setting up on your own and you've been at an agency for X years, you may not know what's best for you. And although you might want the comfort of the CRM you've been using for years, there's a high chance you won't be able to replicate what you've been using more recently, particularly if there's kind of in-house dev teams making changes to that system specifically to that firm. So I think for me, honestly, it was getting more of an insight and more objective options that work and have worked for other recruiters that made it really helpful in going through Recruit Hub. In terms of the reasons as to why kind of I decided to go with Recruit Hub or launch with Recruit Hub, for me, although helpful, it wasn't all those systems, right? It wasn't necessarily the CRM, the application, the VoIP application, the tools. It was the IP, it was the intellectual property. It's the network and the advisory side that I saw tremendous value in. In its purest form, recruitment can be done with, a phone, an email inbox, and I suppose LinkedIn. All three things cost next to nothing. What I figured out, having spoke to lots of founders before making the decision to kind of do it myself, was that you can't do it on your own. At least if you're thinking seriously about scaling something. I'm personally really big on self-reflection and looking inward and seeking feedback, all with the goal of understanding, what things could I be better at doing? And in particular, I've hugely appreciated through working with Recruit Hub that they act as more than just a sounding board. There is strategic decision-making process that's data-driven, it's granular, it's led by proof of concept and sales science. And that's actually allowed me to pivot sufficiently where otherwise I could have made a less than optimal decision. So what I think is important to understand about Recruit Hub is that it's a gold mine of that IP I'm talking about. Years of others making mistakes so I don't have to. And yes, you learn from mistakes, but I'm also happy knowing about those mistakes that others have made and not committing them myself, which saves me time and money. But also like amazing success stories, and assuming we're products of our environment, well, I want to surround myself then with highly ambitious, driven, and obsessively motivated humans because it challenges me daily to be a better version of myself, both professionally and personally.
What misconceptions did you have about being a founder that changed after you'd made the transition?
Yeah, so I'll start with the biggest thing, which is I'll just focus on what I'm good at. I thought I'd spend most of my time doing what I excel at. Instead, I had to learn to handle lots of different things all at the same time. So, marketing, finance, legal, operations. As a solo founder, you can't delegate, right? Chasing invoices, sending client reminders, the anxiety of when a client doesn't pay on time, what am I going to do if they don't pay? I don't have a huge finance or legal department I can call on to handle it. And cash flow is everything to a startup. Secondly, this idea of if I built it, they will come. I thought having a great service and a solid strategy would naturally attract clients, but the truth is, particularly with a year-long non-compete to work around, you eat what you kill, right? Everything you do is constant. So taking a week off has a knock-on effect for the following month. And even if you have a strong reputation in your market, you have to actively go out there and sell and market yourself daily. The final one for me was, I'll have more freedom. And I think this one has some duality to it. You assume running your own business means having full control over your time. But in reality, especially earlier on, I was working easily longer hours than I ever had before. And instead of answering to a boss, you're extremely accountable to your clients and candidates, more than you probably ever will be, because it's your reputation on the line, not a client account manager. So I think, having more control over the hours I work means if I have a doctor's appointment or somewhere I need to be, I can bolt on that extra hour or two later in the day or perhaps earlier in the day, which is really helpful. So although you might work more hours, there's a ton more flexibility in how you use those hours and when.
So, what pre-startup fears did you have before that never materialized?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I wasn't worried about not getting any clients. I wasn't thinking of failure and having to get another job in another agency. All very valid fears, by the way. But I genuinely backed myself to the point that I had and have no plan B. I'm all in. So there wasn't any other outcome other than outworking everyone else to ensure a sufficient level of success in my first year and then go on from there and hopefully start to snowball the business. Simply put, you are what you repeatedly do. And after 10 years in the industry, my fear was less about the job itself and more about the potential of letting people down. The people around me, the people who care most about me, and actually the people who I care most about. That still terrifies me. And I use it as a driving force daily. I suppose not the healthiest way to self-motivate, but it works. Um, my non-compete was another thing that I thought would get in the way. That couldn't have been further from the truth. I mean, yes, it does, but being a smaller firm has so many advantages. And what I found is that many clients I currently work with, they don't want to work with big agencies. In fact, I had a call with a senior talent acquisition professional last week, and he told me that whenever a hiring manager comes to him asking if they can work with X firm, he will talk them out of it because they throw mud at a wall and hope some of it sticks. And not all of them do that, but actually he works for a very large firm and he's more interested in working with smaller boutique agencies. Many firms want to work with a founder, an experienced and tenured consultant, because they know that you are probably one of the best people in the market to engage with because you're deeply immersed in your specialism and they understand that every client means a hell of a lot more to us. So you often see a higher level of customer service and delivery because of this.
What skills from your previous role have proven to be the most valuable as a founder?
Yeah, there's probably a couple that stand out to me. And it's the uninspiring stuff and doing this well that I believe can kind of make or break a founder or a small business. The first being just time management and prioritization. Like, it's such an important component to running your own firm and your own desk. If you get this part wrong, every day is going to feel like a drag and it becomes a lot harder to get strong results. There's a framework that I use every week, every Sunday evening, and it's called the pickle jar theory. And it's really a way to keep myself in check and ensure that I'm on the right path in the week. And it's not just focusing on the big meeting or moving a client along to get an offer letter out. It's also prioritizing and organizing what I'm actually doing with my time and when. And to tie into this, particularly the prioritization piece, it's knowing when to say no or walk away from a client or job rec. Ironically, I say no to more clients and jobs now than I did at my last firm. And secondly, it's the finance and accounting elements of the job. Not something I had to worry too much about at my last firm. I mean, yeah, forecasting and having meetings with your boss to tell them what deals are likely to fall this month. But how to know and read your numbers is important. How to manage cash flow, where to allocate that cash flow and proper budgeting. I'm still not perfect, and I probably spend far too much money on my clients and candidates, but that's just the service I offer. It's comprehensive and driven by relationships and face-to-face interaction. So that comes at its cost, literally. But yeah, it's important to understand what you're looking at in order to make good decisions for the business.
If you had to start your business over again tomorrow, what would you prioritize and what are the things that you would avoid doing this time around?
Yeah, great question. Two things that come to mind with what I'd prioritize sooner. I think the first would be tech and automation. There's a lot of chat about it in the recruiterverse right now, but I would invest more heavily into this. Secondly, I'd 100% pitch retainers and exclusivity more often. It's a much quicker route to predictable revenue, and moving away from contingent heavy work allows you to kind of hedge your risk far better. I think there's almost a feeling of gratitude when a client picks you to fill their role, and when you founded the firm 4 weeks ago. But in actuality, it's because they back you and your delivery capability more than another agency or person. But you almost feel like you don't want to push it, so you just kind of crack on with the contingent work. I changed that very quickly. And finally, I'd say just avoiding, respectfully, low-value clients. And by this, I mean clients with low fees, slow and long drawn-out hiring process where the candidate is meeting with everyone and the janitor. Basically, clients who treat recruitment as a necessary evil rather than a partnership. And you can weed those ones out quite quickly. As a startup founder, yes, there are times where you do need to be scrappy, but at what expense? Could you be using that time to generate high quality, high value clients who actually want to build a partnership because they see value in hiring superstars for their business through yourself?
What's the most valuable lesson that you've learned since starting your business?
There's probably one that stands out to me the most. It's build relationships before you need them. And I say to my clients and candidates often, rather know me and not need me than need me and not know me. But if I take a typical timeline from when I first engage a client to when I sign terms or even get a sniff at a role that they need help with, it's around 4 to 6 months. Now, obviously, there are plenty of far quicker clients that have more urgent needs, but it's looking at those clients that may not be hiring right now because they're also the ones that don't have jobs posted and 20 recruiters knocking at their door. So it allows you to engage on a more exclusive basis and build trust. So build relationships before you need them. A couple of other aspects would be comfort is the worst addiction. If I feel I'm getting too comfortable, I'm probably not doing enough. It's human nature to cut corners and find ways to work smarter but not harder. And find that sweet spot really of being comfortable and keeping things ticking over. But if that's the mindset that someone is going to have in starting on their own, I'd probably advise against going the founder route. And finally, which I think is kind of a strength and a weakness, but empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. There are people, there are clients and candidates who will take advantage, right? Particularly if you feel a little bit more desperate to get that first invoice through the door, get that first couple of, first client signed up. So empathy is a strength and a weakness because you have to draw the line somewhere. So yeah, I think they're probably the most valuable lessons that I've learned since starting the firm about a year ago.
If you could give one piece of advice to somebody thinking about starting up their own recruitment business, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, there's a saying, or I think it's a proverb actually, that I love, and yeah, it goes something like, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now, and you may have heard of it. So my best advice would be just do it. But in terms of practical advice, I'd say don't undersell yourself for the sake of getting a contract signed and a new client on your roster. That contract will last a year or more, and if you're stuck at a lower rate, you will be disincentivized to sign better terms elsewhere, and that will show because you won't have a junior consultant to delegate that account to, and it then becomes a whole lot more difficult to negotiate up. So know your worth, landscape your value, why you charge that fee, the benefit for them, and just lock down your pitch. A lot of founders, I think, fall into the trap of just getting clients signed up to start generating invoices, but that will hurt you and your ROI just will not add up.
What are your top three takeaways from going on this journey to being a founder?
I think the three that really stand out to me, one is mindset determines everything. As an employee, you spend most of your time focusing on execution. As a founder, you have to think bigger. You've got to think about vision, risk, long-term strategy, and so on. Ultimately, there's no one coming to save you, and every challenge is yours to solve. I can't have days where I don't turn up, and so I really focus on having the right mindset daily, which has helped me tremendously. Secondly, that the right people will make or break you, and I mean this in a couple of ways. I'm in the process of hiring right now, but you've got to hire A players, whether that be recruiters or support staff or even external partners. It's just the fastest way to scale. On the flip side, as we all know, a single bad hire can drain time, you lose a ton of momentum, and it costs money. Another component to this is just surrounding yourself with a support net. People that have your best interests at heart will give you meaningful advice and will be there for you when you need them. And final takeaway, I've had to really identify and set in stone my daily and weekly non-negotiables. There's more to do as a founder. And so there will be aspects of the role that you absolutely cannot miss for a week because you know that the following month you're going to pay for that. So I found myself becoming much more disciplined in what I execute on and what is ultimately non-negotiable.